use all our car parks. No, no. We use our car parks anytime. Yeah. Use one anytime you want. I'm going to give you the number. That's an efficient use of our resource.
All right, team, we're live and we will kick off. So we will just stand for the karakia and then we will get on with the meeting.
Kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, I he ake ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hohunga, te hei mauri ura.
All right, thank you very much. And we'll open the meeting at 4:33 p.m. this day, Monday, the 7th of April. First up, we have apologies. So we have an apology from Linda, and no other apologies, but a potential early departure. Oh yes, and an apology from Bridget.
Happy to move.
Just a second. All in favour? Against? Carried. Part 2, declarations of interest. We don't have any declarations noted so far, but if anything comes up during the meeting, just let us know and you can see back from the table. Item 3, confirmation of the previous minutes. David, happy to move. James, happy to second. All in favour? Against? Carried. Right, and that moves us on to item number 4, public forum. So first up, we have Christchurch Enviro Hub and Ben Alder will be coming to speak to us. So come and take the stage. And we have 5 minutes, including time for questions.
Kia ora koutou katoa, Ben Waimaero. Thank you for having me. I just wanted to speak on one of the synergies between the Waimāero board plan and the CH operations. So, do you mind just going to the next slide? Yep. So basically, actually, no, sorry, you can go back. Thank you. So just to give you a bit of a background on Christchurch Enviro Hub, for those of you that don't know what we're is basically a centralised medium that seeks to support environmental and sustainability groups in Christchurch, Greater Christchurch, and we do this through a variety of digital and physical resources and networking events, map and directory, eco events and funding calendar, and educational programs. So just to explain the synergy, similar to the board, Christchurch Enviro Hub one of our work streams focus on improved maintenance and water quality in our streams and oceans. So we do this through the stormwater trailer. Adrian, if you can please. Thank you. So basically what the trailer is, if you haven't seen it before, is an educational resource on wheels. And we take this to a variety of different events, such as schools, commercial sites, and public events, such as like Culture Galore and Estuary Fest. And when I say commercial sites, I mean malls, supermarkets, that sort of thing. So over the years, we've been delivering education to the public around this topic of stormwater and contamination, and kind of explaining the actions that people can take to make sure that we keep our waterways clean, and just habits they can improve on to make sure that happens. If you could please switch to the next slide. So these are some of the pictures of some of the events that we've been to. Part of the trailer is a digital touchscreen and 2 game boards, which you can see in the top left picture. Basically, those are used to facilitate the conversation, because the last thing we want to do is just talk at people. We want them to fully engage in what we're talking about, and that's through the use of gamification. Accompanying the trailer is also the Turner and Drains game, which you can see on the bottom left as well. And that's basically a snakes and ladder version for Turner and Drains. This applies to all adults and kids. It's not just for kids. There's a lot of misinformation about what happens when water goes down our stream, in our waterways and drains. And so the point of this is just to provide really the basic messaging that people need to know about water going down the drains not being cleaned, and where it does get cleaned, as well as the contamination, which is the level of dog poo and the washing cars. So we've engaged with over 6,550 people already over the last couple of years, and just within this last financial year, we've done over 3,000. If you could please go to the next slide. Some of the events that we've been to, or sites, I should say, are on the left, and some of the ones we're going to soon are on the right. We basically have a limited availability or ability to go out to events, schools and sites, because we've only got one smaller contract with ECAN City Council at current. So my intention coming here is just to make you guys aware of what we're able to do, and maybe if you had any suggestions and the ability to fund is coming, suggesting any malls or schools or public events that you might like us to attend as well. So that's the main point of this, but this just gives you an example of the sort of places that we've been to. We literally just went to Armageddon on the weekend, and that was a really interesting and fun event to do. If you could please go to the next slide. One other thing I just wanted to plug as well is that we've just opened an environmental co-working space. So this is aimed at non-for-profits that do work in the environmental and sustainability sector. And it's a pay scale arrangement based on what they can provide, they can afford, because obviously most non-for-profits aren't able to afford too much. So I just wanted to make that as well. And then last slide is just our contact details. So that's all I wanted to make you aware of. Did you have any questions for me?
Sure.
Yeah.
So do you also cover areas beyond Christchurch City?
We've gone to as far as Kaikoura before. That was a direct contract through ECAN Kaikoura. So it really depends. We are actually talking with Selwyn and Waimāero councils at the moment as well to get some contracts to go out there. So it really depends on how far you were thinking, because you obviously have to tow the trailer there. Yeah.
My other question was about the schools, but I think you have already preempted that.
Yes, we'd likely do schools if they're within like a 40k radius. Yeah.
Any other questions, Aaron?
Yeah, where does your money currently come from, and what's your annual budget?
For the stormwater trailer or the whole organisation?
Well, mainly the stormwater trailer.
Mainly stormwater trailer. So at the moment we get we have a $56,000 contract with ECAN City Council that's just about to come through. They gave us a slightly smaller one last year as well. And then we've also, the West Melton Zone Committee has been pitching in as well. They gave us about 8. And then this coming year, we've got a couple lined up with the Coastal Board and one with Selwyn District Council for about 10 on each.
What is the 58 by?
58. So basically the trailer itself was built by ECAN City Council. So they pay us to manage the resource in its own. So that's taking it for its wharf and rego, setting up the health and safety plans, covering all the resourcing of staff to facilitate the trailer, because that's the main thing that costs money, is actually having people that are available to engage with the audience. And then, so the operations side of it costs about, I think on the top of my head, it was about 20 to 25, and then the rest is allocated to a variety of events. But some events take a lot more time. So like if you went to a mall, you have to work with retail hours, which means we probably have 4 people, 2 shifts or 2. And then if you do a public event, you're looking at about maybe 5 to 7 hours, depends on how long the event is. Schools are usually the shortest amount. That's usually about 4 hours, because you have certain classes come in and cycle through. Yeah.
I was just wondering, sorry about the schools, excuse me. Do you directly contact the schools, or how do you get that information out there that you're available?
They've actually been pretty good at contacting us directly. I think a lot of teachers tend to see it at public events, so we haven't really had to try contacting school at all. The only problem is because we are limited with the budget we have. So just to give you some context, it's about 17 events per year with the main contract, and that is divided among 6 commercial sites, 7 public events and 6 schools. So 6 schools for the whole, is not very many. But yeah, if we had a bit more, or we had contracts directly per ward area, then we could obviously just contact them and say, this is how it would run for the day. Are we available to come into the school? Yeah. It's all good.
Any other questions from anyone? Great. Thank you very much for coming and seeing us.
Yes.
Next up in the public forums is the Belfast Area Residents Association in Charlotte.
So the last time I was here was actually a year ago, exactly almost to the date, and we were talking about Belfast Road again. But that time it was about burnout activity, but we've got all on top of that with our safety cameras. So I'm able to move on with Belfast Road, and we would like to have a consideration or start a discussion about a shared pathway along Belfast Road. So Belfast Road has effectively changed significantly since the Northern Motorway went in, because it's now an off-ramp, on and off-ramp to the motorway. So the traffic volume has actually gone from an average of 3,157 traffic movements per weekday, and that was 2018 data, to 7,463 traffic movements per day, and that was last September last year. So that's a 236% increase in traffic movements per day. It's still very much an industrial area. There's a high usage of the car parking on the side of the road, and it makes when people want to cycle down there to access the Northern Motorway shared pathway, they literally have to be in the middle of the road to achieve that. We just flick on, so it's just how I was thinking. So that's the length of Belfast Road we're looking at there. Where I've got the crosses is where the to the left-hand side at the end of Belfast Road is the new school, the senior campus for Belfast Primary. And then you've got the junior campus on the other lower cross, just to let you know how much of a connecting road that is. And then you've got all of Spring Grove in there too that will use Belfast Road to access both schools. And next slide. So that's just the average carriageway inside the Belfast village that the subdivision team is currently approving. And they're about 1.3 to 1.5 metre earth berm and a 1.5 metre pathway. So that's about, still gives us some nice green space. So next. So this is Belfast Road on the northern side. We've actually got a berm of over 5 metres available to us, which is all council owned land. So you could actually easily still have a 2 metre grass verge and a 3 metre wide road shared pathway, which seems to be about the average shared pathway width. So that's just a bit of an extension in order to achieve that. And then the next slide, but then we hit the industrial area and the pathway stops. There's actually literally no footpath at all. So you'd need to put that in until but you still own, the council still owns the land. There's still the setback available until the railway line. And next one on. Oh, that just shows, sorry, the southern side of the road. It's only 2.7 metres wide, I think was that. It's too narrow to put it on that side. So next. And this is just beyond the railway line to the left and another industrial area. However, in this particular case, there's likely to be a requirement to purchase some land because the boundary goes of those industrial sites quite close to the boundary. That will be your most expensive portion because you've got stormwater. There's no curb and channeling there either. And once it's in, and then the next slide. No, I won't worry about that one. Yeah, so this one connects us to the cemetery, and then you've already got your pedestrian island in the middle of the road in order to cross from the entry to the Northern Motorway there. So that connects Belfast to all of this wonderful infrastructure that kisses our boundary, and we want to be able to use it safely. So it's possibly a good timing to start getting this on the radar. I did speak with Lynette Ellis last year, head of transport, and she was favourable for the proposal. She said we need to start getting it on the radar. So this is the whole purpose of talking about this, and also with Radcliffe Road, which we're definitely not going to try and swing attention from. Just once Radcliffe Road is under the belt, perhaps then we can focus on Belfast Road, which will also include a railway crossing upgrade, and we'll just hopefully mirror Radcliffe Road if we can. So I just want to say, we're a rural area that's been now made high density residential, and we need the rural to turn into residential to connect us. So, any questions?
Questions from anyone on that?
My question's more to you, Jason, is where does the board take this from today? Certainly the one that stands out the most is from the railway line to here on the northern side, because that's about to be developed industrial land or partially through. Now's the time that our planning staff should be, especially when they're negotiating with the developer on which work they'll do. That'll be the time to get the path and that sorted for that portion. But how do we flag that?
Yeah. So I'd say we just, after the meeting, we can just request the team to make some requests through to Hereford Street and see where they're at. Like, where's this in the planning pipeline? Is it already, is there anything on the horizon? And if not, then we will start the process of seeing how far forward we can bring things. And whether that's something which becomes a board priority next term potentially, to try and make sure it's a focus, we can look into doing something like that.
That'd be fantastic. They might come back to us. This is just a very brief outline and say, no, we want you to use the other side of the road and put a proper crossing at the railway crossing. All of that's fine. Just somebody have a good think about it while we're moving forward. Thank you very much.
Awesome, Charlotte. Thank you. As always, it makes perfect sense.
Railway line, I think the problem.
All right, next on the agenda, item 5 is our deputations by appointment. So our one deputation today is Colin Mute. You would like to come, and I think you're speaking on behalf of the Canterbury Botanical Society regarding the McLean's Island Reserve Management Plan.
Kia ora.
10 minutes, including time for questions.
Yes, and I'm sorry I don't have a PowerPoint presentation, didn't have time to do that. I made a couple of hard copies though, which you can look over each other's shoulders at if you wish. Some pictures there. So thank you for the chance to speak to the history, the value and the looking after of this highly significant Canterbury Plains habitat. I have permission from the Canterbury Botanical Society President to represent them as my presentation is largely in support of their submission. I'm an ecologist, and I should note that that's a very woke thing to be, and by that I mean awake. Just very quickly, the history of this area. Back in the day, Brian Malloy, late Brian Malloy, who probably the most important bit of information about him is that he was a 1956 All Black. Drew attention to the distinctive values of McLean's Island grasslands and savanna steppe environments. And I've even got one of his early publications here, for those that are really intrigued by that. And of course, he was also wrote in the Natural History of Canterbury back in the 1960s and 70s. And then in the early 1990s, I was involved in conceiving the Christchurch 360 Trail as a vehicle for recognising, celebrating and gaining attention for, at the time, unprotected natural values around the city, including McLean's Island. I was then one of the advocates for informants for Peter Ruff, the landscape architect, who, under contract with the City Council, put together the Canterbury Plains Grassland Park concept proposal in 1997 to capture the experience and broad vistas of formerly extensive primeval grasslands, shrublands and woodlands on the Canterbury Plains. Subsequently, a number of grazing management trials were conducted over the several years, a couple of decades, to assess the pros and cons of sheep grazing on the values of McLean's Island grasslands. And a few years after all of this, the formal park designation came to fruition through the efforts of the City Council planner, Kelvin McMillan. I was involved with that a little bit. And subsequently, I've been engaged with Christchurch International Airport Limited in planning the management of the natural values of their adjacent lands. So I'd reiterate the key points that the Canterbury Botanical Society made, which the City Council have by and large adopted, but just to emphasise a few points. So first of all, to ensure no developments or activities harm the important and now decimated natural values of the Canterbury Plains. These are very precious, and I just keep reiterating that. There's almost none left of this kind of environment and the species in them. One of the sort of more contentious issues about it is applying managed disturbance, which could be sheep grazing and potentially some scraping in areas that don't affect existing values, to maintain more than 20 native flowering plants that are highly significant and would otherwise succumb to competition from introduced grasses and other weeds. There are also, of course, dozens of host-dependent invertebrates, especially butterflies and moths, and also lizards associated with these plants. As I say, it's a little bit contentious. I note that the City Council response to the advocacy for this kind of approach was non-committal in some ways, although grazing is referenced in the plan. And I guess my kind of basic recommendation is that it is a critical and complex situation, and I would advocate, that an ongoing co-design approach for developing site-specific, spatially explicit rendition of the plan be implemented. That this would comprise and engage, I could name, up to a dozen sort of ecologists who have got experience and knowledge of these kinds of environments, working with the City Council ecologists. And, reaching some consensus around the placement of woodland, shrubland restoration, which is a key part of the plan, and that the intricacy of the shrub patches don't interfere with more broadly applied appropriate management of the in-between areas, the grassland areas, the matrix. This arrangement with an ongoing monitoring role would address and quote from the City Council perspective, a number of potential issues with management disturbance that could result in undesirable outcomes. So, we need to keep multiple lenses on tracking those things and making sure there aren't any losses, that we have a clear vision and can adaptive management as required. So the other main points are using existing gravel pits once they are closed to be used to extend the drylands, the old young terrace habitats to increase the populations of some of the most at-risk species. There's also then, of course, the animals, the invertebrates and the lizards and some birds that may be encouraged through various kinds of management, including predator control, and importantly, integrate the future plan with the adjacent airport land and Environment Canterbury land, make sure it's all kind of integrated into a larger scheme, and also with those shingle pits too, which are quite extensive in the surrounding areas. I think these can be employed to provide future expansions of some of these habitats. Preserve the riparian wetland values along the water race that runs through the middle of this area, and on a separate mission to preserve water races across the Canterbury Plains is often the last remnant of wetland and riparian environments that were naturally colonised from the adjacent natural wetlands that existed prior to intensive agriculture. And so they are quite significant in their own right. And of course, also ensure all similar habitats that still remain across the plains are protected and appropriately managed, as each site will be unique and have its own combination of species. There's never a single representative, habitat that contains everything. They're all sort of slightly different and have their own special characteristics. So attention to this as one of the uniquely critically valued habitats of the city should be elevated to promote the city as a biodiversity hotspot. So this broadens the perspective of this. Overall, there are as many native plants growing wild in the greater Christchurch area as there are in our national parks, but their critical threat and low level of protection is of deep concern. The natural and cultural value of these taonga should be identified and highlighted, in the local schools to generate a special sense of place in Te Rangawaiwai for Christchurch. And a lot of this flies under the radar. And I included a few pictures from talks that I give, which show Christchurch 360 trailers down on their hands and knees, looking at the minutiae of these places, including the little orchids and mosses and within that kind of broad savanna type. And I note importantly that the surveyor's stone there, which you can see also in that picture, is given special protection. That's quite a valuable little bit of cultural heritage there. And the piwaka fly around amongst the shelter belts and so on. So thank you for your time, and happy to take any questions.
Yeah, then we've got time for 2 or 3 questions if there are any. That was quite comprehensive. Thank you very much. Aaron?
So any endemic species in this particular grassland?
Well, many of those rare 20 or so that I mentioned that are especially vulnerable, I'm going to guess and say half of them would be endemic to New Zealand.
Right. Any locally, like the famous cabbage?
One of the orchids, probably my colleague on the left here might know specifically the hooded orchid. I think might be a localized species, but most orchids in New Zealand have got close relatives in Australia. Yes, the Rollias, the Kamakelias, you know, the little scabweeds and the native brooms and so on. And there's a bunch of other things, yes, that are endemic. Yep. I can't just give you the exact total number. But the project on iNaturalist gives you the total list of species that have been recorded in this area. There's about 220 species, but that includes plants, animals, and exotic species. But you can see
in the one grassland.
In the broader area of McLean's Island, it includes some of the Ecan land across the Conservators Road as well. And some of the Sile land.
Maybe time for one more question if there are any. No, fantastic. Thank you very much for coming in and presenting on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right, with that, we close our deputations and move on to presentation of petitions, of which there are none. And from there, we move on to staff reports. So we actually, first item on the agenda is the adoption of the McLean's Grassland Reserve Management Plan. Nicholas Head, come take a seat. We've also got Karen and Robbie. Okay, great.
Happy to move this one, Mr. Chair.
And thanks to Colin. Colin's given a pretty good summary of the importance of the site. You know, following on from when we met not so long ago, we've since prepared the plan, and we've consulted pretty widely on all of the 6 people or so who submitted. And I'd like to say we've addressed all the concerns where we possibly can. That includes the quarry companies, the Botanical Society, and that was primarily it, wasn't it?
Neighbouring organisations and businesses.
And so basically we need your approval, but I'll just follow on what Colin said in terms of the endemic species. Of course, there's a butterfly out there that's only known from those grasslands. It's a boulder copper thing, it's unnamed. And also probably in terms of plants, most importantly is the Plains Olearia. That's a shrub daisy, which is only found on the Canterbury Plains and really now confined just to where the undeveloped lagoons, that's on in the Plains. So that's locally endemic species. And then all the other ones talked about primarily are these New Zealand endemics.
Fantastic. Right, any other questions on the report? No? So who was moving? Aaron's happy to move. David happy to second.
Let's plug out those minor little, is that right, what I've put there? For those wee tweaks we made? Right.
Oh, that's been clarified. We've fixed all those, we've made all those minor amendments.
Yeah, so that's the version you sent through on Friday, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. Just because that wasn't printed in the English, that's why I've noted it, yes.
Okay, great. We've got a mover and a seconder. All in favour?
David
and Aaron. Aaron to move. David to second.
Okay.
All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Fantastic.
Thank
Thanks
you.
very much for your work on that one, guys.
It's almost next year.
With that, we move on to item 8, Tralee Reserve and Crofton Reserve place-based renewals. Holly Whitaker.
For inspection.
Already.
Looks like grass.
Yeah.
So we're going close. But
You're
Oh.
okay? I don't have a presentation. I'm just here to answer any questions.
Yep, James.
Thank you for that, and great looking concepts and everything. One thing, because I've got a 3 children, 7 years and under, I've become a bit of a connoisseur of playgrounds. 2 things that I've noticed with that, and my children, their friends often tend to boycott playgrounds that don't have monkey bars as well. So never realised that how popular they were, but that's one thing that I noticed are included in both. So that's pretty cool. The only other thing that I have become aware of, which I never thought of pre all this, and I'm sorry about the preamble, but it's going somewhere. And it's just that I've always now wondered why, when playgrounds are built or constructed, the slides that always face south and west end up getting pretty much no use over winter because it rains and it's wet and the sun doesn't dry it out. And I've always then thought and have learned over the past 7 years, why would anyone, when they're redoing playgrounds, have slides that don't face ideally north or at least east, where it dries out the rain, so the slides get used. So all the playgrounds that I go to, I see that the slides that either face south or west never have the use over the colder months because there's a frost and it's damp, and people generally don't carry towels with them to wipe it down. And I guess where I was going with that is the second one, the Craycroft one, has got a west-facing slide. So I guess my comment is, in light of my learned observations with that, is there any chance to rethink the orientation of the slide?
Short answer, yes. We can go to the manufacturer, and that's very astute observation. Well done. And yeah, I also have a 3 and a 1-year-old, so I am always at playgrounds all the time and agree. So yeah, in short, it's definitely a possibility. They can often tweak those modules. So yeah, I will need to check. It looks like it should still fit within the setback requirements and within fall zones, but yes, I will look into that for
Awesome.
Crofton. Yeah, that shouldn't.
Thanks, because it looks awesome, and I didn't want to slow it down. You know, pursuing the perfect at the expense of the good. But yeah, if there's a possibility for that, I think that would be great.
Yeah, there is quite a lot of trees at the back of that reserve that might hinder the sun, but I don't know whether they're deciduous or not. So they might lose the leaf litter anyway and help with that. But yeah, we can definitely look into that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Any other questions on that one?
Yeah. Oh, no, I was just gonna say, sometimes some of the slides get so hot that they burn your. We can't.
Yeah, we face to go into specifics of slides, but we face the difficult decision because plastic slides obviously get broken more easily, and stainless steel is a really stronger, a much preferable option, but it gets so hot, and if we powder coat it, that chips off and rusts. So we then have to put shade provisions above stainless slides, which then have a massive extra cost and aren't always feasible. So there's not really an ideal option.
Some of the plastic ones get quite hot too, though.
Yeah, I always like to put yellow ones in so that you don't, but
I know, we always test them first.
Yeah. Yeah, we go for light coloured ones.
Yeah, that's good.
Question from me. The rockers, I've got a bit of a bugbear of those because they kind of look cool, but hardly anyone ever uses them. Do we have any alternative options that we could potentially install instead of a rocker?
Well, your question may have made it to me a few minutes before I came. In short, I guess I do see kids using them. My littlies do like them, but I do see that as soon as they get a little bit warm, they become less used because they don't move the same. I had a little look around. I only got this about 10 minutes before I left my desk. And basically we're just trying to fill a small spot there. Yeah. The alternatives I temporarily came up with, my children use the double rockers a lot more, where there's 2 kids on it, and I see at Scarborough, the bigger one there gets used a lot. So I have got a bigger option because it's all about fall zone and we're trying to fit in a small item in a small spot. Alternatively, I can pass this down.
One of those spinning around things.
So the only reason I really went with the rocker is because a few people requested
something
elephant
themed. Yeah,
things, and that's unless you go bespoke. That was the only way to fulfill the elephant need. But look, we could put a spinner in instead. Those have got similar fall zones and they're in the similar price bracket. So if you wanted to switch the rocker for a spinner, we can. I think the feedback for Crofton was a bit higher, but the rocker was maybe 1 or 2 people. So we might, that's your call, but we probably won't bother too many people if we switch the rocker for a spinner.
I'll be willing to eat that one.
Okay.
If we could make that change,
Bowl or cup?
Cup?
Yeah, cup seems more popular.
Yeah.
Only when you're at the park, just the
definitely
cup.
Some of my kids put me in the cup one and it's terrifying for an adult.
I hate it.
It's terrifying for an adult.
But the kids like it.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's more accessible. Children who don't have full use of all their limbs can put in it, and the littlies can sit in it without. But then the older kids prefer these ones that feels a bit scarier. So
okay.
Depends who you're trying to appease.
Go at the moment, but you can't screen.
Yeah, the accessible cup one would be our preference if possible.
Chalk.
Okay, that's, yeah, other than that, it's great. I'm always wanting to pass that Crofton Reserve because that's right in my neck of the woods. I've always seen it's a great space. It's really underutilized. It was kind of a bit barren in terms of what's in there. So with that playground and the monkey bars, there's a good amount of them in there. I'd say we'll be down there with my 7-year-old because the next closest good amount of monkey bars we've actually got in the ward really is actually Belfast School out the back.
Monkey bars are so popular in this area.
There's just not enough monkey bars.
Yeah, maybe it's a
Body
deficit.
strength in this part of the country.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hardcore monkey bars were requested on multiple occasions for this. So yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Any other questions on those ones, guys?
No, it looks so awesome. So thank you very much.
Right.
Happy to
move.
Or you might, it's in your bag.
So, is that a question?
No, I'm happy
You
to
go.
second.
Okay, well, I'll be happy to move that one being it's in my patch and happy to second.
Thank you so much.
No worries.
To note the change from the rocker to the.
You already done it. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And you've taken on board that orientation one.
Yeah.
Yes,
I'll look and see if it's feasible.
So maybe Mary Ann, you could organise a launch date where everyone could have a turn in the spinner. Nicola's never been in one. So.
Yeah, well, I'm quite interested in seeing Jamie in one now.
Yeah, still waiting.
Lights
flashing before my eyes. I can't get
Let's have a big lunch first.
And we all know Sam's never been to a playground, so even as a child, it's just
Something I like, so I've got a car.
Adam.
Okay, let's keep going.
All right, let's keep going. We're in trouble.
So
All right, item number 9, discretionary response fund applications. Natalie.
Didn't
I managed to sit down today. So this is just the Belfast Community Network, and they are looking for an extra pair of hands to do their regular events and look to increase and grow it, so.
Right. Any questions on that one from anyone? Do I get a mover for that? Aaron to move. David second. All in favour? Against? Carried. Fantastic, Natalie. Thank you. Then we have the YDF applications for Canterbury Pacifica Volleyball Association and Badminton Canterbury. Is Lisa on the line?
I certainly am.
Fantastic. Floor is yours.
Okay, I take the report as read. We have 2 groups here who are travelling away doing their thing. The second group is quite large. There's actually 45 players travelling with the Badminton Canterbury away to the Team Badminton Championship, so that they're spread across all of the ward areas. We have quite a large number with 16 players. And the Canterbury Pacifica Volleyball, we have 4 young people going away. Volleyball is very big in the US and they're participating in the Polynesian Volleyball Tour. It's quite high expense for those guys at over $5,000 for the 2 players in our ward area. So any questions around those?
No. Great, thanks. Can we please have a mover for that one? David, happy to move. Suresh, happy to second. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Fantastic. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you very much, guys.
With that, we move on to item number 11, the Community Board Area Report. Mary Ann.
Yeah, happy to take the report as read and answer any questions you might have. Short and sweet report this month, but anything in there that.
Any questions from anyone? No? Okay, great.
Oh, the only thing was just around culture galore. And I know we've commented on there, which is good, but did you have any sort of anecdotal feedback?
No.
No.
I mean, Lisa's she gone off the line, but
I'm still here.
People were really understanding and really grateful that the call was made early enough that they didn't go out and spend all that money and then not be able to use
You
them.
could repurpose it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's good to know.
Have you had any other feedback, Lisa?
No, exactly that, Marianne. It was an extremely hard call to make, and in the back of our mind was all of those community groups having to spend money on not only food but also compostable food packaging, and many of them expressed thanks for giving them that extra day's notice. They would have started cooking that afternoon if we had not called it. So very disappointed, but we had to do it. But yeah, oh well, bigger and better next year.
Fantastic.
I had similar feedback from whoever I spoke to, because there were many people who I knew as individuals and community groups, and I had to tell them don't go. And I put on Facebook and Neighborly, and they understand.
Great. Okay, can we get a mover for that? Aaron to move,
Second.
Sam to second, all in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Fantastic. That last item on the agenda, elected members information exchange. Anyone got anything to share?
Just one around Burnside Park, so the heat pumps that were, or the copper that was taken.
Oh, the scout bin.
Yeah, that the scout den, which just seemed bizarre that anyone would damage all of that for that. So it might be quite good to have a look at that in terms of what we've got available that might be able to help.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll get you to get in touch with them, Lisa, and see what we could do to help.
Yep, sure.
Yep, cool, okay. Thank you all, perfect. And then maybe could we have something back for the next meeting?
Yeah.
Do you reckon that'd be the way to do it? Yep. Cool. Perfect, thank you all.
Anything from anyone else? Okay, one thing from me then, so the sports network plan has been released, which is great to see. Obviously a lot of work gone into that. One of our board priorities this term was Sheldon Park and kind of looking to get renovations of Sheldon Park on the radar because of the condition of the field in the wintertime. And with the growing community, it is a resource which is going to have a lot more load on it going into the future. But it was actually quite difficult to tell from the sports network plan where Sheldon Park, if at all, fits into the greater picture there. So it'll just be a case of requesting some more information from the team now that's firmed up in terms of what that looks like, because obviously Sheldon Park is a board priority for this term just been. So we'll have to look to see kind of what that can mean going forward for Sheldon Park. And with nothing else on elected members information exchange, we will finish with the closing karakia and close the meeting. Everyone stand, please. Una here, ki te uru tapu nui, kia wānatu, kia mana, tēnā. Te te ana, te waipu, te ana, takapata. Ko e o, e roho. Whakakairia ake ki runga. Kia tēnā, hui, tai. Thank you very much, everyone. And with that, we close the meeting at 5:14 p.m.
Your report was 2 by the way.